Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog, which I am recording on Thursday. You're seeing it the next day, Friday, which is Friday heading into the July 4th weekend. I suspect not many people are going to be watching my vlog. Well, I don't get many people watching it anyways, but I keep slogging along. I hope to get more viewers as I go along. But I don't want to spend, I had a vlog all prepared, but it would take me a long time to prepare. This one has, well, it's going to be one of my longer ones, and I don't want to do it to broadcast on a day that probably nobody will see it because you're getting ready for the 4th of July. It'll probably be broadcast on Tuesday, next Tuesday, because Monday we'll all be celebrating the 4th of July. So what I'm going to do today is, by coincidence, I got a question in my comments from, well, this person, Turbo Jones, comments very often. As I've said in the past, I generally don't respond to comments for the simple reason that I have this vlog to say whatever I want for as long as I want, so I really try to leave the comments section to all of you to post your own comments. I do jump in occasionally, though, sometimes to correct a really major factual error, or to, in this case, to answer a question, sometimes just because somebody raises an interesting point that I think I should expand on. Or, yeah, actually, sometimes somebody just makes a mistake. They misunderstand me, and then I want to clarify what the person misunderstood. But today I'm answering a question, and it actually raises a pretty good subject, wider subject, so I want to get into it. I'll just say at the very beginning, I'm a conservative. Always keep that in mind when you evaluate whatever I say, because especially today, the question concerns conservatism. I would think you would want, well, I mean, you can get, you could ask, I guess, a liberal, what does conservatism mean to you? That actually would be a pretty interesting question. But I'm a conservative, so I can't tell you what a liberal... Well, actually, there is one study I can share with everybody. It was done some years ago. Interesting study. It consisted of asking conservatives what they thought liberals believed and asking liberals what they thought conservatives believed. Well, actually, I can share one study that was done some years ago. Interesting study in which conservatives were asked what they thought liberals believe, and liberals were asked what they thought conservatives believe. The way the study was done, the interviewer would ask a certain question about race or international politics, whatever. I don't remember the specific questions, but the question would be posed to a liberal, and then the liberal would be asked to reply, how do you think a conservative would answer this question? And then the reverse would be to pose the same question to a conservative and have them respond, how do you think a liberal would answer that question? The result was that overwhelmingly conservatives were by far most accurate in predicting how a liberal would answer, and liberals would be the least accurate in describing how a conservative would answer. For instance, I'm going to discuss, it's one of the questions, or part of the question I'm going to respond to today. Do you like racism against blacks? Do you like racism against blacks? Almost every conservative, including myself, would say, no, we don't. We don't. But liberals predicted that conservatives would answer yes. And if you would ask, is it okay to discriminate against white people, for instance, to redress past discrimination against black people, the conservatives would predict that liberals would say yes, we're more likely to say yes, and they would be right on that. It's a very interesting study. If I can dig it up some where well, it would be on the internet. If I can dig it up, maybe I'll share it in a future vlog. Very interesting. But here is the full question from Turbo Jones. Let me pull it up. Someday you'll need to explain what being conservative means to you, meaning me. Do you like racism against blacks, or is it that you just believe creating policy to treat them differently is not effective? For example, period. I don't know what that last part means. Was that, for example, supposed to come after not effective, and it should have been a comma and a small f? Or was it, for example, and it should have been a comma, and then there was supposed to be an example to follow? I don't have the answer to that, obviously, but I will answer these two questions that are here. So first of all, well, we'll take the last one first. Do you like racism against blacks? Or is that you just believe creating policy to treat them differently is not effective? That's very simple. I don't like racism against anybody. That includes racism against blacks and reverse racism against white people. For instance, this talk about reparations. My parents came from, well, my father came from Europe, from Hungary, well, from the Ukraine, actually. It's a long story. That's where he was born. My mother's parents came from Russia. My father, I mentioned this in the past. I don't really mention it because it doesn't come up and it really doesn't matter. Just about everybody in America has a story. We really are, or are the descendants of, most of us, people that Europe did not want and treated badly. In my father's case, he's died some years ago, a concentration camp survivor. So you're talking about descendants of slaves, for example. As far as I know, concentration camp prisoners were, well, he was a slave laborer. That's what he was, because, well, he would be dead had he not been strong enough to work. So he was a slave laborer. So you talk about descendants of slaves. I am the son of a slave. So to ask me, or to demand that I pay reparations to the descendants, not the people, but the descendants of somebody who was a slave, it's insulting. Never mind that it's wrong. It's just insulting. Never mind asking American citizens, naturalized older American citizens who actually are concentration camp survivors. You see how ridiculous this is? But also, well, I'm not going to, this is a future vlog about the misunderstanding or just the ignorance of American history regarding slavery, but I will just mention a man named Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson, he lived in the 17th century. He was black and he won he won a civil rights victory. He won a civil rights victory. He went, it was a white court, and he won. And we never hear about this civil rights leader. And I think I can guess why, because the right that he won was the right to own slaves. He owned slaves, and before that, he had 4 indentured servants. 3 of them were white. So you had a black landowner who he came to America as an indentured servant himself. When he finished his indenture, the custom then, or the law then, was to get 100 acres of land. He was given 100 acres of land. He expanded on that, became very wealthy. He owned a number of slaves. Anthony Johnson has no living descendants today, but there are other black slave owners, a number of them. So first of all, why should their descendants get reparations, if that's your logic? And why should the descendants of black slave owners not pay reparations, if we're being fair about this? But my ultimate point is, nobody should pay reparations. Now, I do have a faint memory. I could be wrong about this because I was only a child, but I have a faint memory of my father getting a check from the German government, some kind of reparations, just a token amount, not very much. But he got something from the German government, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but if he did, that would make sense. He was a concentration camp victim, but I would also say that the German government, the Nazis were gone. These were the democratic Germans. So I would even have a question there, but the point I want to get to, Germany doesn't owe me anything. I was not in a concentration camp. In fact, I was darn lucky to be born in this country, the United States of America, greatest country in the world. But I'm the descendant of a concentration camp survivor, and about 4 or 5 uncles who, 5 uncles and a grandfather and a stepmother step-grandmother. They all died in the camps. And I say right now, Germany doesn't owe me anything. Germany does not owe me anything because I was not a victim. And I apply the same logic. I apply everything fairly. Now, about do you like, do you believe creating policy to treat blacks differently is not effective? That's not the issue. If you treat me differently, I'm not black, I'm white. If you treat me differently, it's effective in the sense of if I need $1,000 to buy something and you give me $1,000, yeah, that's effective in giving me $1,000. Now, if you're asking, is it effective in curing racism? No. Because, well, I just mentioned concentration camps, which leads to anti-Semitism, which is going to be the next vlog, by the way, something about that. But anti-Semitism has been around for 2,000 years. Probably longer, and it's still here. So if your goal, if you're black and your goal, or if you're anybody, if your goal is to end racism, my advice is don't waste your time. You're not going to. After 2,000 years, anti-Semitism is not around. But in this country, we solved that problem. And the way we solve that problem is by advancement through merit. Well, before that, equality before the law. If I have a dispute with a black person and I'm white, we go into court, we have a fair trial. And as long as it's fair, well, that's what it means. It's fair. If I punch a black person in the nose, he can punch me back. If he punches me in the nose first, I can punch him back. And if we end up in court, you look at the facts. So that's number one. But number two, advancement by merit. Because, well, what do I believe as a conservative? One of the things I believe is that we are individuals. We should be judged individually, not by our membership in a group. So for a long time, let's say if you wanted to join the fire department, your local fire department, and you were black, there would be a sign, don't bother to apply. We're not going to hire any black people. But those days are gone. So today, if you want to join the fire department, you can. Nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you from taking the test to join the fire department. And that test must be the same test as a white applicant would get. The test should be identical. Everybody takes the same test under the same conditions. But after that, it's on you how you do on the test. Well, let's say you have for the fire department 200 people applying and there are 100 positions available. Then fairness would be you just take the top 100 scores on the test regardless of race. And if it means that no black person, let's just use that as an example, is among the 100, then the answer is not lower which is what's happening, lowering the tests or not having the tests at all. I think I mentioned in an earlier vlog, I'll bring this point up again, if we're talking about fairness. I went to Wayne State University, Detroit, Michigan, grew up in Detroit. That's where I went to college. I would have loved to have gone to Harvard. Why didn't I go to Harvard? I would have loved to go there because my grades weren't good enough. My grades weren't good enough and my SAT score was not good enough to get into Harvard. That's fine. I accept that. I know today that Asians overwhelmingly do well, if you're fair, to pass a test to get into Harvard. I have no problem with that. That's perfectly fair. What I do have a problem with is somebody getting into Harvard with the same grades that I could not use to get into Harvard, somebody scoring lower on the SATs and getting into Harvard when I couldn't. That's unfair. That's reverse racism, and I oppose that. Everybody takes the same test. Everybody, if you're talking, see, that gets, racial quotas often get, I would even say most of the time, get conflated with affirmative action. That is a different issue, and as a conservative, I have no problem with that. For example, using college entrance exams, you want to have a diverse student body, not just on the basis of race, but you want to have urban dwellers, you want people who come from the country, from different parts of the country, you want some foreign students. You want a good mix of students, and it's perfectly fine to set aside, say, 10% of the available slots for black students. No problem with that, as long as they pass the test. In other words, if you have, let's say for the fire department, 100 positions open and 200 applicants take the test and 150 pass the test and you only need 100, it's perfectly appropriate to use a quota in that sense to say that you're going to take the black applicants first up to, say, 10% or whatever percentage, and then take other people, other ethnicities or whatever, to fill the rest of those slots. No problem with that. I have a problem only with lowering a standard because it doesn't solve the racism problem, and it has serious repercussions. The Bakke case is a good example. The Bakke case where Allan Bakke was not admitted to a medical school, a lower scoring black applicant was admitted. Bakke went on to another medical school and went on to have a medical career. The black applicant who took his place got his degree, went on to have a much shorter medical career. Why? Because of malpractice. He botched up, he did plastic surgery, I believe it was. He botched up several operations and he lost his license. What about the people who were operated on by this doctor? That's what's wrong. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help any student trying to learn, a black student trying to learn, if he's being taught by a teacher who can barely read, who was selected by race and by no other criteria. That doesn't help that student, whereas if you had that student taught by the best teacher, and if the teacher was white, so what? That black student would grow up to become a teacher himself. And you solve the problem that way. It's just one generation removed, that's all. But that's the way you solve the problem. It doesn't help anybody because you also have, I just read an article, the failure rate in bar exams. Bar exams, the black applicants are failing at a greater rate than other applicants. They got through the school, but then they have to go out and they're saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that they won't be able to pay back because they can't get their law license. And one more factor in education, there are some people who, if somebody gets the same grades as I do and doesn't get into Harvard, that student, let's say it's a black student, can go to Wayne State University, just as I did. Perfectly fine degree. They graduate lawyers, they graduate doctors. My brother graduated from Wayne State University. He got his law degree at University of Michigan, but he got that undergrad degree that got him into a top law school from Wayne State University. So these students who are dropping out or not doing well in Harvard, how do you help them when it's called mismatch? This has been reported in a number of publications and studies. It's called college mismatch, where you are putting, I guess, a Peter principle applied to education, where you're promoting somebody over their abilities. They're not doing Harvard quality work, as I wasn't, but they could excel at Wayne State University and be an A student and be much better off, and plus it's cheaper. So that's one of my beliefs as a conservative, is that you give everybody an equal opportunity, but then it's up to them to get the results. If they are, and this is a fact that has to be dealt with, and this is where I see hypocrisy from my friends on the left, because it's understandable that they are not. So a lot of black students are going to, I just mentioned the poor quality school, and the solution to that is charter schools, or just give the money to the students or their parents and let the parents pick the best school. But our liberal friends oppose that. I, as a conservative, I support that. Let parents send their kids to the best possible school. Or if you're talking about a student not having the grades to, say, get into Harvard, I perfectly support tutoring, giving a student, a minority student, the tools and the education that he did not get in a failing school, so that he could then take the test and get into the school along with everybody else. And then you don't have, this is the other damage that I see from these quotas, you have people who are, it just breeds resentment against, and I'm not talking about other white students, I'm talking about other black students. If you are a black student who got into Harvard on your own merits, that you passed the test, and then you see all these other students who got in, it's the same as immigration. People who come to this country, one reason we conservatives are getting more Hispanics, for instance, to join us, is because they came into the country legally, and they see all these other Hispanics getting into the country illegally, just walking over the border, and it breeds resentment. So I see another problem with that. I see a problem where you demand equal outcomes instead of equal opportunity. Everybody has to be judged on the same standard. It doesn't matter. We've never had a Jewish president, for instance, and it never bothered me. It never bothered me. I am not demanding a Jewish president. It doesn't matter as long as it's a good president. That's all that should matter. And now the other belief that I have, my primary belief, I mean, I would be here all day if I went through every little detail, but what is conservatism? To me, civilization, history, is a series of trials and errors. That's basically history to me as a conservative. That, for instance, marriage, why do I believe in the two-parent family, traditional two-parent family, one father, one mother, opposite sex, and kids being raised by those parents instead of as single parents? Well, number one is because you look around you, you can see the trouble that, well, in Chicago, you see all this crime, and it's because of the number of young males who are growing up without fathers. And to me, that is because of liberalism, because they don't, when I was young, you didn't see that. Black people, minorities got married the same as white people did, because whether you were black or white, you would be shamed if you were an unwed mother. But liberals say it's okay, just like they have this term fat shaming, that it's wrong to criticize people for being fat, and even putting fat people on covers of fashion magazines and the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. To me, well, it's not okay. And I say this as somebody who was a fat kid. I was a fat kid. Everybody made fun of me. But I dieted and I exercised, and I'm trying to lose some weight right now. I'm not really obese, and I live in Tennessee. And today I live in Tennessee, and one thing I will give New York, I moved from New York a couple of years ago after living there for about 40 years. In New York, whatever you can say about New York, the people took care of themselves. They took care of themselves, and I was disappointed as a conservative because I'm in Tennessee now, a conservative area, and I see so much obesity. It's an epidemic of obesity, grotesquely fat people. It's not a rare sight here. It's very common, and what's even worse, fat children. And at this point, I can hear some of our liberal friends saying, maybe even most of them, well, what's wrong with being fat? What's wrong with that? You're intolerant. Why do you have a problem with fat people? The problem I have, or why I have a problem, because I love my fellow Americans. I want them to have long and healthy lives, and obesity is a big obstacle to that. For instance, to take one obvious example, diabetes. If you're overweight, you are prone to getting diabetes, and then you're going to be sticking a needle in your arm every day for the rest of your life, or at least until a long-term cure comes up. But even then, who wants to have diabetes? What is good about diabetes? Because if you say obesity is fine, then you're saying diabetes is fine, because you're putting these people at more risk for it. And as I said before, it's especially bad to see a child obese, because I know from personal experience, again, I was a fat child, I know how hard it is to deal with as you get older. So that's one problem with it, but the other problem is the healthcare cost. The cost of insurance, health insurance, is higher because of the number of people who have to be treated for obesity-related diseases. And then our liberal friends want their pie-in-the-sky major goal is universal health care, where all health care is paid for by the government, which means paid for by us, the taxpayers. So what is the advantage of that? I see nothing good about being fat, and I remember, see, this is how much the Democratic Party has changed. Why, I think I mentioned in an earlier vlog long ago, I used to be a Democrat. So I know from which I speak, I voted for Jimmy Carter, believe it or not. He was the last Democratic president I voted for, but I voted for Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, and the results of his administration changed my mind. I saw the light because of Ronald Reagan. I've been a conservative ever since. But getting back to the Democrats the way they used to be before, as Reagan famously said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party left me. I don't think JFK, John F. Kennedy, could get the nomination today. I really don't. But I remember in those days the emphasis on physical fitness. Kennedy, JFK, you'd have photo ops of him playing football, tag football, and an emphasis on physical fitness and exercise. I would see TV commercials about it. For instance, the Wonder Bread commercial, I remember those, build strong bodies 12 ways.
These are the wonder years, the formative years, ages 1 through 12. The years when your child develops in many ways, actually grows to 90% of her adult height. To help make the most of these wonder years, serve nutritious Wonder's soft whirl bread. Wonder helps build strong bodies 12 ways. Carefully enriched with foods for body and mind, Wonder's soft whirled tastes so good, has a smooth texture with no holes, and it is so good for growing child, for active adult. Each slice of Wonder's soft whirled supplies protein for muscle, heart, and tissues, minerals for bones, blood, and teeth, carbohydrates for bulk and energy, vitamins for nerves, skin, glands, senses. All vital elements for growing minds and bodies. To help make the most of her wonder years, her growth years, serve Wonder's soft whirled. Helps build strong bodies 12 ways.
The reason I lost weight, because when I was a kid, people made fun of me. I did terrible, and I was always the last one picked for the baseball team. I would be last in the 50-yard dash when we would get time, if they even time people in the 50-yard dash, or children these days, because that's competition, and that's bad. So that's another reason why I'm conservative. Competition is good. We are built on competition. Civilization advances by competition. When I was a kid, dodgeball, well, because I was fat and slow, I got hit a lot. And what I learned from dodgeball, number one, it hurts to get hit by a ball thrown by a kid who's, in better shape than I was. But also, not everybody is a winner. Not everybody is a winner. You compete, and there is, like in the Highlander movies, in the end there can only be one. One person is left. That's an important lesson to learn in life, but they don't have that anymore. My nephew, my male nephew, he played t-ball. What the heck is t-ball? T-ball, you probably know, if you have kids, you put throwing the ball and you try to hit it, and if you miss, you strike out. No. We can't lower the self-esteem of these kids, even though they're going to have their self-esteem attacked and lowered many times during their lives. But now you put the ball on a large golf tee, I guess. That's why it's t-ball, and the ball's right there, and you hit it, and you can't miss, and it's so ridiculous. And all these new quote-unquote innovations to just deny what I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said it, that the facts of life are conservative. Liberals keep trying to change the facts of life, and people can't cope when they grow up. That's why you have all these snowflakes in college. They don't want to be triggered, and that's why they lose to conservatives, by the way, you liberals out there, because you never have to debate. Your views are never attacked. Because if I want to say something, if I want to speak on a college campus, if I were of the stature that I would get invited, well, I would get disinvited. So you demonstrate against opposing views. You don't learn to argue against them. Whereas we conservatives, we are always having to argue against liberal views because we are attacked all the time. So we learn how to defend ourselves. It's just like the kid who gets, hit a lot when he was, I was one of those kids when I was a fat kid. So I would get, and plus I'm Jewish, so I learned to punch back. And that's how, by getting hit. And I learned how to take a punch by getting hit. I don't know if I could take one now at my age, but you see my point, and I'll get to the final point right now. I think I digressed, but life is, or history is, a series of trials and errors. So you see, for instance, these, gay marriage and single parent homes. My problem with those is trial and error. I'm sure there was a time when our prehistoric ancestors were free or able, well, as they are today, frankly, but they could form any kind of relationship they wanted to. So that you probably had hundreds of thousands of years ago the traditional male-female family, and the child being raised by both parents. You probably had same-sex unions and single-parent families. Mothers getting pregnant, and then the father just leaves the mother. But the traditional two-parent, it became the traditional family unit. Two parents, opposite sex, raising the child till the child is an adult. The reason that became traditional is because that won out. All the other methods were tried, and that one won out because over time it was shown to work. And the problem I have today with liberals is they forget all that. They forget, for instance, the first colony, the Plymouth colony, was a socialist colony. It was run on socialism. Pilgrims came, they just shared all the one big piece of land. They all worked it. They all shared it together. They all split the crops evenly, and they starved. in the first year, because each person, it's just obvious, just human nature. That's my other problem with liberals. They keep trying to, well, this would be another vlog. The genius of our country is that, and our Constitution, is that it recognizes the weaknesses of human character. Liberals think they can overcome well, not overcome, just eliminate these weaknesses, and we would all be angels. As a conservative, I don't think that's possible. I think time has proven that. And so, getting back to the Pilgrims, it's just obvious human nature. If you're going to get an equal reward with everybody else, then why should you work hard, let the others do all the work, and you're going to get the same reward anyways? That's so obvious, and it was proven, because the colony, they almost starved to death in the first year. So the second year, they gave each person his own plot of land that they would farm and keep the rewards for themselves, and it worked beautifully. That was the beginning of this country. It's not slavery, as that's my other problem, the rewriting of American history. And then I guess I'll throw in a last one, because the woman who wrote this 1619 project just got tenure in a university. She was denied tenure at first because of the shoddy quality of her scholarship, but liberals demonstrated and she was given tenure. I could go on and on. You get the idea. I'm a conservative because I believe we should all be judged as individuals. We should all be treated the same, that equality of opportunity is the byword and the watchword for a successful civilization, and not equality of outcomes. Each of us is free in this country to achieve as much as we want to, and there are so many rags to riches stories that that point should be obvious, especially when you compare it to Europe, and especially when you take people, well, such as my father. Well, not my father. Well, my father is the only one of my relatives who came to this country and did not get rich, but he was able to raise a family, and he had a store, and he did okay. But my Uncle Herman came to this country about the same time with nothing, started out at $30 a week in a swimming pool lining factory, or swimming pool liner factory, eventually came to own the factory. He owned the whole factory, and then he sold the factory, started a new factory, his own, and by competition, put his old factory out of business. He outcompeted them, and that factory, that company, exists today. They're still around. The CEO was, I imagine still is, Larry Schwimmer. Larry Schwimmer is my cousin. Gene Schwimmer, Larry Schwimmer, my cousin. I remember when he was, a little 7-year-old. And America is the land of opportunity. I believe that. I'm not a billionaire like Jeff Bezos is, but that's my own fault. That's my own fault, and I did all right. I mean, just by being in this country, I think I'm doing all right. And I guess that's it. I hope I answered the question. Everybody have a great 4th of July. I'll put up probably a little just placeholder for the Monday, 4th of July, because you'll all be out celebrating. And then I'll be back with a full vlog on Tuesday, July 6th. So again, have a great 4th of July. I appreciate, as always, the time that you spent with me. If you could give me a thumbs up if you like this vlog, that would really be great. Share with anybody you think would also like it. Got any comments? Comment section below the video where you can put questions, suggestions for future topics. You could subscribe. I love getting new subscribers. You could visit my other channels, my hot dog recipe channel, my original music channel. You could, well, just come back and see me again. I would love to see all of you again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.